Welcome to the Garcia Podcast, a podcast featuring commerce students from Queens where we talk about what actually goes on at Queens. On today's podcast episode, we have Sasha, who's from the States.
Hi.
So, Sasha, I want to thank you once again for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Awesome. So, Sasha's from the States, and I wanted to ask about why did you choose to go to Queens Commerce? Because obviously that's a Canadian school. You could have went to UCLA, you could have went to BU, NYU. Why did you decide to go Canadian?
So, my mom is Canadian, so I'm half Canadian, I'm half Dutch, but I grew up in the U.S., but she's actually a commerce alumni. She went here to Queens, and my sister goes here to Queens, so it's always been very instilled in our household, sort of, that, we were going to go to Canadian schools. But, of course, I still could have applied to a U.S. school. I just think that nowadays, the prices of U.S. schools are just, exorbitant, and, I feel like here I'm getting the same quality of education, if not better, than I would in the U.S. for the exact same price.
And what makes you say...
not for the same price, for a much lower price.
That's fair. What makes you say that you're getting the same quality of education at Smith compared to, a U.S. school?
I think that, at least back home, it's sort of an idea in a lot of people's minds that it's sort of U.S. or nothing, or that the U.S. schools offer the best education you can get in the world, and I just feel like that's not true. I know Smith is an amazing program, Queens is an amazing school, and I feel like just because it's in Canada doesn't make it any less than any U.S. school, and Smith is just such an amazing program that I'd argue that it's even better than some U.S. schools.
And there's actually a lot of people at Smith, at least what I realized, there's a lot of people at Smith that are that have U.S. nationality.
Yeah.
I'm really surprised by that.
I know, the pool seems to really be growing. I had come in, I didn't really know anyone. I knew one girl who was also from the U.S. and in commerce, and I thought that we would be the only Americans. So I was so surprised when I got here and there were kids who were also from Connecticut and from Boston and from California. So it makes me honestly really happy.
I see a lot of people from Boston though. That's something I realized that are in commerce. But also, out of all these, I guess, Canadian schools, right? Was Queens the only school that you applied to out of all the Canadian schools that you could have applied to?
I applied to Queens, Western, and Guelph. So I applied to 2 majors at each school. At Western, I applied to sort of Ivy, and I applied to Arts and Sciences. At Guelph, I think I applied to Marketing, and I applied to Arts and Sciences, and then here at Queens, I applied to Arts and Sciences and Commerce. But Commerce was always my top choice, just because of the opportunities that it provides, because I feel like I'm a person who doesn't really know what I want to do yet, but I like that Commerce lets you explore everything. They teach you accounting, they teach you economics, you can learn marketing, they teach you math, which I think gives you a lot of variety.
It's kind of my struggle right now.
But also, I think it's just great, sort of it opens so many doors for you. So whatever I do end up wanting to do when I graduate, Commerce provides a very good path there.
And did you get into all 3 of those different schools? Guelph, Western, and, well, you obviously got into Queens, but did you get into Guelph and Western?
Yes.
And did you get in for Commerce as well for all those 3 different schools?
Yeah, I don't know if I got into Ivy Advanced Entry. I don't think I did, but yes, for Guelph and for Western and for Queens. I got into all of the programs that I applied to, but I didn't really want to go to Guelph or Western, so it was always between Queens, Arts and Sciences, or Commerce. Then when I got the Commerce offer, I was very excited to accept.
Okay.
So why did you apply to Commerce? What's been good about it so far for you?
I think my journey was kind of an interesting one, because I was supposed to be a high school dropout. Well, not dropout, but after high school I was supposed to take a gap year. And at the time my photography business was kind of popping off. But my parents were really adamant on me going to university. So I told them this is the one school that if I got in, then I would pursue university for 4 years. And I applied to Queens, I applied to Carleton, I applied to Laurier. I got rejected from Laurier, got accepted to Carleton, and they were all for business. And I got accepted for Queens. And I was oh, I got into I would say it's one of the best schools in Canada for commerce.
Yeah.
And I was my dad was okay, well, you got in, you got into one of the best schools in Canada for business, so now you actually have to go. But looking back, I'm really glad that I actually accepted and actually went to commerce, because the community, no one really talks about the community at Queens for commerce, and it's really uplifting and motivating, and I wouldn't say it's competitive. You're surrounded by like 500 different applicants or people that are in the program, but they're all like so motivational and they've got really high drives and like they just really want to go out in the world and kind of just like achieve stuff. Like I know a couple guys that apply to so many different clubs or in so many different like just avenues in life. So it's kind of like, I'm really glad I applied and I feel like I'm having a lot of fun.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure about commerce because I've never been a person who's like, I want to work in finance or like I want to work in marketing. Like I really don't know, and like honestly I've never really like loved economics or business either, but also I wasn't very exposed to it, and so far it's been great. Like I honestly like it so far, but I think the community has honestly been my favorite thing, which has made me so glad that I applied because it really like I would say there's probably about like 2,000-ish students in the entire commerce faculty.
Because it's 500. It's 500 per year, 500 seats per year, and then usually not many people drop out. So it's like 2,000. Yeah, that's a good estimate.
Everyone is really nice. Like even when we started off on O Week, like our bosses who were the second years and like the CEOs were all so nice, and like you could just see how much they loved the program, which just made me so much more excited to be a part of it. But like I love that when I go to class, like it's the same familiar faces, like I get to know people, but I also really love the small class size. Like even though there's still like 70, 80 people in your class, I find it much better
than like 500
people in a lecture hall, because you can ask your professor questions. Like the professor goes slow and like you know everyone in your class, so it really just like makes the feeling of community so much stronger. And I just joined one of the clubs as a first year rep, HSL, which I'm so excited for, because now I get to sort of like meet upper years and find out why they love commerce and just like expand, I guess, my interest in the commerce community, like just get to be more involved in it, which I think is super exciting.
I think what I noticed is everyone is super friendly. Like they want you to succeed.
So nice. I think the biggest misconception is that people are like, commerce is so competitive, they're so ruthless, everyone's so rude. Like everyone I've met so far has been so nice. Like all the upper years I've asked it for like, oh, like what did you do for your club application, or like what did you do for accounting? Like they're all like, oh my gosh, I use like this resource, and like make sure you do this in your interview. Like, and even all the professors too, and even like your classmates, like everyone, no one I feel like is really like putting each other down or like hoping that everyone fails. Like everyone during the interviews, at least for the clubs, was like encouraging each other, helping each other prepare for like classes and the tests. Like it's just everyone has been really nice. Yeah,
that's like something I love about the community. And I wanted to ask about, do you really like the structure of how they structure the program? Because it's like for the first 2 years, you know how we had to take like the general like accounting, you had to take finance, you had to take statistics, but in the next 2 years, it's kind of like you can kind of choose whatever you want.
I like it. I think that if anything, it makes the experience better, because my favorite thing is that it's a degree in commerce and not like just a degree in like accounting or like marketing. Like you don't have to specify your major. But I like it that they're making us, even though like, I'm not loving accounting so far, but like I think that it's good that they're making us take these classes, because it's very important, like basis knowledge to have if you want to work in a degree or you want to work a job in business. But I like that later on, once we've sort of like taken the classes that they need us to, we can sort of see like, oh, I really liked marketing, like let me do more of that, or like I really liked math, let me take some more math classes. So what about you?
I think for me it's kind of like, I really enjoy how it's like they give you a good foundation. Obviously, like I don't enjoy counting. Like it's boring for me. Like it's just like I don't like adding up all the numbers, and it's kind of just really boring. But I do think it's really important for you to understand, like as an entrepreneur, like if I might be an entrepreneur one day, it'd be like important to understand like how finances work, or how like taxes work, or how stuff like that works. So even though you might not like or enjoy the course, they're fundamental for you in business.
Yeah.
Which is why I can see like, although I don't enjoy these courses right now, like I'll appreciate them in the future when I actually like, I'll be grateful that I took these classes.
Even like calculus, like all throughout high school I've been like, why am I learning this? Like I don't need to know this. And then I'll be in calculus class and we'll like do problems that like actually are business related, and I'm like, okay, so this is actually applicable to the real world. I didn't think that. But I still like feel like I don't even know a lot about like the business world, so I'm excited just to like even take more classes and sort of like figure out what I like and what I don't like and like learn new stuff.
Do you have a certain avenue that you're kind of like leaning towards? Because I know the 4 major concentrations, at least in commerce. I might not know all of them, but it's like you either go into accounting, finance, consulting, or marketing. Those are kind of like the 4 big ones.
I would say I don't really know yet, but that's what I like, is that I still have 4 years. So like I'll see what I like and what I don't like. I might work a job that like, you know, I tried it out, I didn't like it, then I moved to something else, or like have an internship that I was like, yeah, it was nice, but it wasn't for me. I just think that I'm a person who wants to work in a job where I get to work with other people and where I get to be creative. Like I've always said that I'd love to work in like entertainment or like fashion or like journalism or anything sort of like artistically related, because I feel like that's something that's very important to me. But in terms of like what aspect, if I'm going to work in like finance or marketing, I don't really know yet.
You don't really know?
Yeah.
Would you rule out, well, I wouldn't say rule out, but I know like a lot of the trend is that you either go into finance or consulting in your last years. Well, that's kind of what I kind of like experienced, is that most of the 3rd and 4th years, they kind of stick with either finance and consulting, and they don't really do accounting or marketing or management. But that's kind of just what I've noticed.
Yeah. I honestly don't really know yet. I feel like I need to like I've never taken a marketing course in my life. I don't really know anything about like finance and investing, so I think that it's stuff that I definitely want to try out. Like I was told by some of like my friends and family that they were like, one summer just like take an internship at like a finance firm, and like, you know, the job, like they have jobs where you're working like 16 hours a day and you make a lot of money.
But it's
like,
a lot though.
It's a lot of work, but they said that it's a good life experience to have. And it's fun, honestly, because my mom did it when she was younger, and she was like, yeah, I loved all my coworkers. Like we would always go out for drinks after and stuff like that. So I feel like that might be something. I'm very open to sort of just like doing anything, and if I like it, then I don't like it and I'll do something else, but I want to try everything.
I think that's a really good mindset to have, at least in commerce. Like we have this thing where like all our professors talk about kind of like the growth mindset.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like you should try it out, and like you shouldn't be weighed down on if you fail, at least you tried. Like that type of thing. So Sasha, walk me back. You're in grade 12. Imagine you're in grade 12, you're applying to Queen's or for Queen's Commerce, right? I think a lot of our viewers would appreciate if we talked about what your stats were, what your ECs were, extracurriculars, what you did to get into Queen's, and then your supplementaries, like what did you write about?
Yeah, so the application process for me was honestly like, it was just like such a weird process and journey, because all of my friends were applying to U.S. schools, so here they are like writing their college essays in the summer, like already by the time we started school in September, they're like doing their applications and writing their different supplementary essays for all their schools and like checking over their grades and like figuring out what schools they want to apply to. And the Canadian school applications didn't even open till October 1st, so for the first month I was just completely lost. And then like all the US schools are on Common App, and I'm like, what is OUAC? Like I knew nothing about the platform. I knew nothing about like, oh, this school needs like this and they need these essays, and like they just want your grades. Like it was honestly, in retrospect, a lot easier than a lot of the US school applications, because for every program except for commerce, I just had to submit my grades and my transcript. While with commerce I had to write the 2 supplementary essays, but they weren't really that long. But for commerce, I had looked at the requirements, and the biggest one is the 87 or above average. So I had about a 91, so I knew that I had made the cutoff. And it's really important. A lot of people think that like, oh, I had a 98, but like this person had a 92, like why did they get in but not me? I think people forget how important those essays are, and they like literally specify once you meet the 87% cutoff, it's all about your essays. Like you could have an 87.5 and someone else have a 99, and if the person with the 87 has better essays, they're gonna let them in. But I had written the essays in December, because from when you choose to do it, you're given a month to write your essays and submit them before they give you a new prompt. So
do you remember what your prompts were?
Yes, so one of them was, what is a time that you have like stood up for yourself or like stood up for others and sort of like made a difference? And then the other one was, tell us about something in like your life's like extracurriculars or like your culture, your background that is like so important to you that you believe your application would be incomplete without it. And I actually wrote both of my essays about the same extracurricular, different like events, but it's this summer camp / nonprofit organization I've been a part of since I was 10 years old, and it's called CISV. So it stands for Children's International Summer Villages, and the premise of the organization in itself, it's like worldwide. So I was a part of the New York chapter, but they have chapters all over the US, in like Boston and like Tennessee. They have chapters in Toronto and Ottawa, in Amsterdam, Paris, London, like Seoul. So my mom did it when she was a kid, and she said it was like the best experience of her life. She was a part of it till when she was an adult. My sister did it, and I did it. So when I was 11 years old, I went to summer camp for a month in Seoul in South Korea with 3 other kids from New York and then a leader, and we were with 48 kids in total, so from 4 kids from 12 countries, and then 12 leaders, 6 junior counselors who were like 16 years old from all over the world, and then like a bunch of staff. And the whole premise and goal of the camp is to promote world peace through children. So they teach you about important things such as like tolerance and different cultures and like inequality and stereotypes and sustainability in a way that's fun but also very educating. So
what do you mean by they teach you in a way that's fun and educational? Like,
so we like, it wouldn't be like we would just sit down and they would tell us about like income inequality for 3 hours. Like they would do an activity or like a simulation that was sort of based on it, and then afterwards we would like talk about it or debrief, like talk about what we liked and what we understood. But it wasn't always so serious. Like we did fun, like we had scavenger hunts, we would play capture the flag up in the field. Like each country had their own like national night where you would present like your culture in a night to the rest of the kids from the camp. So I believe that at 11 it was just such a life-changing experience for me. It made me, I think, basically the person I am today. So like I consider myself to be very open-minded. I love to travel. I love to learn about other cultures and like learn about each other's differences and similarities, because while we're all from different countries, we're all just kids, and at the end of the day, children are children. Like they're very similar. We all loved to play outside. We all loved eating ice cream. We all just wanted to have fun. And so after I finished that program, like my love for the organization just grew tenfold. I did an exchange program as well in Brazil when I was 13. So we had a girl from Brazil come and live in my house, and then I lived in her house. And once I was 14, I was allowed to join the junior board, which was the extracurricular I did. And so I joined as the treasurer. I was the treasurer from when I was like 14, 15 years old to recently. I just gave up the position in August now that I'm here in university. So that organization in itself is what I wrote the first essay on, about tell me about something that's part of your life that is so important that you believe your application would be insignificant without it. So I think that acting as treasurer gave me a lot of like experience in sort of like, not really like a job, but like it was volunteer hours. I was able to meet like my 2 best friends through that. But I also got to really help out the community and like make a difference in some of these kids' lives the same way that I felt my leaders and staff made a difference in my life when I was 11, which was just very rewarding and happy for me. And so for CSV, they do a local camp as well called Mosaic, which is for 1 week. It's completely free. So you get kids of all different backgrounds, of all different incomes. And that was what I wrote my second essay about. So I was volunteering as a camp counselor, and we were doing an activity that was like conflict resolution. So it was like, you need to create a skit about a conflict and then create another skit that shows like what led to the conflict. I guess to sort of justify that like, oh, people aren't mean for no reason. People don't do bad things for no reason. Like there is always a reason. In the skit, I was in a group just with the other junior counselors. Like we did something so ridiculous about like Kim and Kanye fighting, but the kids, but there was one group of kids, and they had done their skit where there was basically someone was being like racist towards one of these other kids, and they had tried to like justify it by like everyone in the group like approved of the skit. They wanted to do it, and like it was their idea. No one told them to do it. And then like the justification or like the pre-conflict skit was like, oh, the person's dad was racist and taught them to be racist, but the whole skit was like very, very lighthearted, and like the kids were laughing, and I felt like no one really understood like the deeper implications or like the seriousness of such a topic like this. And I knew that a few of the other kids were also like slightly uncomfortable with it. So when it came up at our meeting that night, because we'd always sort of debrief the day and figure out what we were going to do for the next day, what we could have done better, I was like, is no one going to talk about the elephant in the room? Like, is no one going to talk about how they just did this skit about racism and, you know, they were laughing about it? And some of the other staff members didn't really understand, because they were like, well, the kids created it, like they all thought it was fine, so like what's the problem? I was like, well, there are other kids who might be uncomfortable with it. I, for one, am black and I am uncomfortable with this. I feel like we can't just brush this off. I think it needs to be addressed. And I feel like that was really the first moment that I sort of stood up for myself and really was able to stand up for what I believed in was right, even if other people didn't agree with me. And I think it really like taught me a lot and helped me build a foundation for like last year and even this year, that now I've definitely gotten more confident in when it comes to standing up for other people and standing up for things that I believe in, even if not everyone else agrees with you.
That's honestly such a powerful story. Like I can see how you got in. Like there's a lot of people that like they have, I wonder what they wrote about, but like what a lot of people don't realize is at Queens for Commerce, they want you to be like diverse and want to be inclusive, and they want to be like everyone's all included. So obviously standing up for racism, that's a huge topic that I probably like, that probably scored a lot of points. And
I think when it comes to the essays, like all they really want to see is who you are. And people are always saying, at least as back in the US, they're like, don't write about sports, don't just write about like, oh, your family or culture. But I feel like if it's important to you and if it makes you who you are, write about it, but really show how it encompasses you and why it makes you the perfect candidate for commerce. You know, like you can write about how much you love soccer and how you were on the soccer team. Just make sure that it really exemplifies
like who you are. Yeah, I think there's another important asset or a factor that you have to put in how you grew as a person. So you can write about soccer, you can write about volleyball, you can write about whatever sport that you want to play, right? As long as you answer the question and you have a kind of like a mini lesson that you took away from it. So I guess from you like standing up for racism, you probably at the end you had to put in a little section about what you learned. Yeah. Or like how you grew from that specific scenario. And that's really what they're looking to see. You always in the essay need to tie it back to yourself. It can't just be like, oh, tell us about an experience and you describe the experience. Like you need to tie it back to yourself, and as you said, sort of show like, this is how I grew, this is what it meant to me, this is how I became a better person from it. And then that I think will definitely, I don't want to say it'll definitely get you in, but definitely boost you up against other applicants who might not know that, I would say. But what did you write about? I wrote about photography and what it meant for me. This is kind of like not really a touchy subject, it's sort of a touchy subject. So I used to be kind of shy when I was kind of growing up, and so I would always have like this camera with me. I'd always enjoy taking pictures, but what I wrote about was how photography for me was kind of a way for me to communicate with other people. Because just going up to someone and just talking to them is kind of just, well, when I was younger, it was kind of really frightful. But with like a camera, when you take a picture, you can kind of capture these emotions like that people have on screen. So you can capture emotions such as like joy or anger or like sadness or even just fear. But when you show someone that picture, they'll understand what it is that you're trying to convey, because these emotions, they're universal. Like everyone kind of experiences them, even if you're like from a different culture or you don't understand that like language. So in one of my opening sentences was I showed like someone a picture that I took of them, and then they were speaking another language, but they gave me 2 thumbs up because they understood, like they understood what I was trying to tell them. So that kind of how do I say this? That kind of made me like realize that, oh, like with a camera I can actually like speak to people. So I kind of picked up my camera and I started using it more, and it was kind of like how I grew my confidence. And how I was able to build like social confidence. So by the time that I actually wanted to like start speaking with people, like I wouldn't have to use my camera anymore. But at the end I talked about how it was my way of kind of giving back to the community. So I'd be documenting pictures about Francophone life or supporting like black businesses in my community, but I could do that because I had the power like with the camera. I really felt like I could achieve everything. And then it's kind of like, it's funny because ironically the last sentence on my essay was that when I came to Queens, I only had one question in mind. As I'm holding the camera, I'm like, what's your story? And literally like my TikToks, my vlogs, those are kind of like helping like high school students about what a day in a life would be at like in commerce. And then like these like not vlogs, but these podcasts obviously kind of show like what's it actually like, a one-on-one perspective of what Queens Commerce is like. So in a way, it's kind of ironic because like looking back at my essay, I'm like, this is what I'm going to do with the camera, and I'm like actually here doing it with my camera, like trying to help out the community with my camera as best as I can. And in the second essay, it's funny because there's a common misconception that's like, don't talk about sports, but I actually talked about how I was a volleyball coach, and I was coaching for it was like in middle school, and it was the semifinals between our team and the other team, and there was 2 minutes on the clock, and score was 24-26, 24 us. And one of our star players just immediately started having a breakdown. And I guess it's just because when you're at that age, when you're in like grade 6, like everything weighs down on you a lot more.
Yeah.
So he'd been playing great, but he's been making a couple mistakes here and there, but he felt like he was losing it, like we were losing because of him. So he just immediately started having a breakdown, like tears were flooding down his face. And I felt really bad, so I really had to call a timeout there. And as a coach, when you're put in that situation, it's a difficult situation. Like your star player's having like a mental breakdown. There's 2 minutes down the clock. You're down 2. So what do you do in that scenario? And like, we'll just call him Alex. So I told Alex like, hey, like, just forget about the score right now. I just want to tell you, like, how proud I am of you. Like, you've played with the most heart. You play with the most passion. I'm really glad that you're on my team. And then I told him, like, if you want to win, like, I still think we can win. It's possible. There's 2 minutes. We only have to have 4 points because it's, like, 24-26. And I told him, like, if you lock in, we can win this, but we can't win this without you. So I need you to, like, start focusing. And it was really funny because at the end of those 2 minutes, we ended up scoring 4 back-to-back points. And he was actually the one that scored us the points. But it was kind of like at the end he cried. But it wasn't because we won, but it was because like someone believed in him.
Yeah.
And that was a really touching story, and it was really an impactful moment because one of the prompt of that original, like that essay was, what was a belief that changed? Like, what was an experience that caused you to change your beliefs? And I had talked about how when I was growing up, my parents were really strict, and they kind of like led by fear. And so when I was in that split moment of wondering, like, what should I do, like, with this student of mine that's kind of like, we're down 2, I was thinking about how my parents would have approached it, but I kind of thought, like, that's not the type of person that I want to be. It's not the type of person, like, I want to, like, lead with, or, like, I want to be that type of leader. So I put that, like, I learned that leading with compassion and empathy is always, like, it's always preferred, and it brings better results than leading with fear. So that was a really impactful story. And it's really funny because looking back between both of our essays, there seems to be like a common like theme of like empathy and like inclusivity and like trying to include others.
And also like leadership. Like I feel like that shows who you are in terms of like being a leader and like looking out for others. But like all of those qualities I would say are really important to like highlight in the essays if you can. Because at the end of the day, they really just want to see you, and everyone is different, and everyone has some sort of quality that makes them different, and that's what makes them so great. So if you're able to sort of like highlight that, it's what they want to see, and it's what you need to use if you want to get in.
That's also true. Can we talk about clubs for a sec? Because a lot of people like have this misconception that you need to join like these, like you need to join DECA, or like you need to join all these specific clubs, or you need to join like 5 different clubs just to get into Queen's Commerce.
Yeah, it's definitely a big misconception in the U.S. because they ask for your transcript, you have to write your supplemental essays, but then you also have to like, you write all the clubs you were in, what positions you were on. And I was in a lot of clubs in high school, like I was a part of our school's newspaper, I like would film the school news, I was our student body secretary for 3 years, I was like vice president of like the Science National Honor Society. All stuff that like it was fun to do, but it didn't matter because the only extracurricular I ended up writing about was the one that was outside of school, and it was the one that I was the most passionate about. And not to say that I didn't enjoy joining all the other clubs. I did. I'm glad that I joined them, but like at the end of the day, they really like didn't matter. So I mean, I feel like that's another piece of advice that I just like would give and would say is just like not to stress yourself out, and that it's not that serious. I feel like it's most important to just do what you love and be happy with what you're doing, rather than just like trying to achieve as much as you can.
Yeah, you don't have to, like, I would say having these different clubs, they help, but like at a certain extent, you should only be joining the clubs that you feel really passionate about.
Yeah.
Like, you don't even need to join a club per se. Like, if you have like a job, if you work part-time or you have a job that you're really passionate about, you can talk about that. Like, it really helps because they're looking for like how passionate you are. Not really how passionate you are, but like it makes your essay, how do I put this, not more convincing but more genuine.
Yeah.
That's how I would put it. And having those different avenues, like having things that you're really interested in, makes for a better essay.
Yeah.
So I feel like that helps, yeah.
Even here now at Queen's, like, I mean, Queen's offers so many clubs, and I've joined a lot of like the more outside commerce ones than the ones that are actually in commerce, because we just had our first year hiring for the commerce clubs, and I'm very grateful that I did get selected for a position. But it's definitely a super, super competitive process, and I know a lot of people didn't get selected, and my mindset going in was just, I'm gonna apply to the clubs that I want to be a part of, and if I don't get it, then I'll apply again in March for like regular hiring. And I'm still joining all these outside of commerce clubs that I can still sort of explore my interest and be a part of something. Like, I just didn't want to let it consume me and let like the rejection, because I did get rejected from 2 of the clubs that I was in, but I'm just like, well, I can apply again in March. Like, it wasn't me, it was just a very, very competitive process. But I think it's most important to just find outlets for like what you want to do. Like, Queens has so many resources, like there really is something for everyone. I have applied to 2 other sort of like fashion related clubs, but I have not heard back yet, so we'll see. But I really just want to get involved in things I like and explore my interests, because with commerce, it's all sort of like business related, and I want to make sure that I still have outlets to explore like my creative interests and like do sports that I like. If it is skiing, and it's also really good because it helps me meet people like outside of the faculty and like in other years as well, because I think it's very easy to sort of like get trapped in the commerce bubble.
Commerce bubble is actually really huge. It's kind of like this thing where we have all these classes together with the same people, and you kind of, it's really easy to be trapped in this bubble. That's what we call the commerce bubble. And it's really easy to be trapped in this bubble where we don't really do anything outside of commerce. So I really think it's like a good idea that you step away sometimes outside of that bubble and do things that you're really interested in that have absolutely nothing to do with commerce, because it's really just a great refresher.
Yeah, because Queens is such a big school and commerce is such a small faculty. Like, there's so many people to meet and interests to explore, and I really think it's just very good and also like very healthy to just like take a break from it all. Like, if you're just surrounded by like commerce all the time, like I feel like it gets stressful, it can get overwhelming, and I think it's good to sort of like just like be with people from other faculties and in other years, and like even in like other residences, because as you said, like all of our classes are in one building. So because I'm on West Campus, when I come to Maine, I like will spend all of my time in goods or like in the library, because I have my classes, and that's something I'm really trying to sort of step away from and just like really be a part of the community instead of like restricting myself to just like staying in a few places.
For all the viewers that don't know what West Campus is, like what is West Campus and how is that different from Main Campus?
So there's the Queens Main Campus, which has all of the residences, libraries, lecture halls, and then there's West Campus, which is like a 3-minute bus ride or like a 15-minute walk away, that has Duncan MacArthur Hall, which is like where most like the health, life science, and general science lectures go on, the education library, and then West Campus, which has Jean Rice Hall, which is my residence. It has about like 550 kids, and then the Jean Rice Dining Hall as well. So I will be honest, like no one really picks West. Like when it came around for room selection time, I had a really awful selection time, and only West was left. And as everyone else says, like I cried, I was so upset, I was so dead set on, okay, when they release the form to like switch rooms, I'm gonna fill it out. And I got here, and I haven't filled out the form yet. It's been great so far, and at this point, like I honestly don't really want to switch. I think that there's a big misconception that like it's the worst thing in the world because like you're so far from everyone and everything, and like it's so isolated, but it's really not. Like, I'm still on main campus almost every day because all of my classes are there. I have a lot of friends who are on main that I've met through my classes or just like through friends of friends. But West also has just like a really nice community that I feel like isn't really found anywhere else, because you guys are like, it is further from main campus, but everyone really gets to know everyone. Like, I really know everyone on my floor, and we found a lot of like commerce girls who are also on West, and we've just become a really close-knit friend group. And I honestly think it's really comforting, and I really like it so far. Like, I don't really feel the need to switch. It would be such a hassle to move, and it's been great. And also, if you're in phase 1, which is the houses that are attached to the building, the bathrooms are renovated, and they're actually really, really nice, which is a really big plus, because if you go in like Gord Brock or like Leonard or something, those bathrooms are disgusting. So
I feel like the community, like, I definitely agree with the community at West. Like, I've been to West like a couple of times, and it just seems to me like, because you are so far away, well, not, I wouldn't say you're so far away, but because you're farther away from main campus compared to all the other residences, it kind of creates this, you kind of have to be a community, and everyone's like really close together, and that's not something you can get at any other residence, I would say, to that extent. But like, everyone at West is really like tight, close-knit. So that's kind of like a plus to being in West.
Yeah, in that sense, a community is very important to me. It's like also why I love commerce. I love just like feeling like, I don't like to sort of like go about my day and like not see people I know and like not feel like I'm a part of something. And so it's so good at West, because like every time I go out in the hall to like go downstairs and get food, or like go to the bathroom, or like go to the common room, like I always see people that I know. Even when I leave the building, when I'm on the bus, like you see the same familiar faces, and it's nice because it's comforting, but also like you really get to know people. Like, if I start seeing the same person like 3-4 times, like I'll start to talk to them and I'll have a conversation. Well, sometimes if I'm on main, like I pass by so many people every day, but I don't know them, and who knows when I'll see them again. So
that's fair. But would you, if you had the choice, and you have to be completely honest, okay, you have to be completely honest, if you had the choice to switch residences at the start of the year, would you choose to switch?
At the very start?
At very start. So say you weren't even, like, you haven't even settled in at West.
Oh.
Would you choose another residence over West?
Okay, not gonna lie, if you get the single plus, like, you're living the good life. If I was given the opportunity to switch to a single plus at the beginning of the year, I probably would have taken it, because you don't have to deal with like the gross, like the buildings are so new and nice. You have a double bed, like you have your own bathroom that you share with someone else. But I don't know, I didn't really know anything. I had heard, honestly, mostly good things about West. Like even a lot of my sister's friends, like they were like, oh, we had so many friends who were on West and they loved it, like the community's really nice. And since I've been here and experienced it, I have to say that they're completely right. And honestly, I wouldn't know. Like, I think that each res can sort of like be like its own little community, but for West, I think you really have to experience it to believe it. Because yes, if I had given the opportunity, like before school even started, and they were like, oh, a room just opened up on Main, do you want it? I probably would have taken it, but if it had been offered like a weekend or even now, I probably would have been like, I kind of like it here, like I'll stay for now. And like, if you really don't like it, the room switch form is always there. And like, granted, it can be hard to switch with a lot of people applying, but like, it's always there if you want to. So like, if you do change your mind, or if something happens and I suddenly hate it, it's always an option, but I just don't feel like it's something that I need to do right now.
That's fair.
But what about you? Because you're living off campus, so it's like a totally different experience.
It's a little bit different. I'm sharing with 2 other roommates. One's like a 4th year commerce student, one's like a master's student. And so kind of like the age gap's kind of a lot. But the benefits of living in off campus is obviously, first one, finances. Like, obviously Queen's tuition, it's like a shit ton, like $20K per year. So like that difference in, I think I'm only paying roughly like $6.8K for 8 months, plus like food, so that maybe like 7.3 or something in total. But that compared to like, how much are you paying for like a single plus, not single, but like a single?
My room and board is like 16,000 something, I think. And then commerce tuition in itself is, I will say, commerce tuition is like
It's a lot.
double, triple the price of the other programs, but I feel like it's worth it because the education and the opportunities that you get with Smith, you just don't get in the other programs. Like, not that they don't provide the opportunities and stuff, but like Smith just has so many resources that you just don't get anywhere else, which is why it ends up costing more money. But the school really does invest so much.
They have a
into
lot
the
of
program.
fun. Like they have a lot of like career nights where like even when you're just walking outside of classes, you'll have like these companies recruiting.
Yeah.
Like these companies recruiting or having like info sessions at like the Commerce Hall. And it's like something, like the first 2 weeks, it was really apparent that they were doing that because they wanted to hire for like September and October. But like they put a lot of that funding into like, it's really evident that they put a lot of funding into Queens.
Yeah. And like living off campus, do you feel like you're having sort of like a different experience as a first year? Has it been like lonely? Has it been fine?
Definitely, like it's harder for me to, I would say, like keep up with like first years or friends or like people like obviously in our year, because I am living like 10, 12-ish minutes on foot like to campus. So anytime I want to hang out with friends, like I have to factor that in. Like sometimes I'm just too lazy to walk. Sometimes like, because that's like, if you think about it, it's like 24 minutes there like total that I have to do walking wise. So it's definitely got its pros and cons. Pros is, well, like it depends on your place, but like I've been really fortunate to like have a really nice place that I consider really nice. Like I have like a shared kitchen that I can cook in. I got like shared washroom between 2 other people and they're really clean. So just being able to afford like just a really nice space to live in as well.
Yeah.
That's like a little difference. Like I would say I would prefer this over like a regular single. Compared to a single plus, that's kind of when the differences aren't as apparent. But I do have the advantage of being able to cook. Just my own kitchen. So pros and cons to both, but I don't think I would trade it for anything, to be honest. Like I'd prefer living like
And even so, like residence is only for the first year anyway. Like everyone ends up moving off campus second year, so then it's sort of like everyone is going through the same thing, like, oh my god, I'm so far from campus, like I'm so far from this person's house. But I'm excited. Like I'm loving res so far, but I do miss being able to cook, and like I miss like having my own bathroom and like a double bed. But you know, it's part of the first year experience. Like it's not the end of the world. Like I can live on a twin XL for a year. I can live in my room that's smaller than my one at home. Like I like it. It's just part of the first experience. I think it's fun to have. Like even though like obviously the single plus is really nice, but like like reading week is next week, and then I'm going home to my bed for a week. So I feel like it's really not that bad.
I think it's really like, obviously if you want to have a good experience, you should go. I would say if you have the finances to afford it, I have to definitely say go on residence. But for all the viewers there that are watching that are kind of like, oh, but like res is costly, like it's perfectly normal to live off campus your first year. Like there's nothing.
Yeah, I know a lot of
wrong
people
with
who
that.
are.
Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much, that wraps it up for today's segment for our podcast.
Thank
Want to
you.
thank you once again for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.
No worries. Yeah, I'm glad this was really fun, honestly.
Yeah.
All right, so guys, stay tuned. Click that follow, click that like button. Follow for more commerce podcasts. Stay tuned.